Alright, so today our lesson is over rational numbers. And rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction where n and d are integers and d does not equal 0. So any number that can be written as a fraction. So if we look at like 121, that's a whole number, but it can be written as a fraction. It can be 121 over 1. You can also have like integers be written as a fraction. If you have like -2, that can be written as a fraction as -2 over 1. 5 over 3, that's also can be written as a fraction. You can have 1.5, which is a decimal, that can be written as a fraction as 1 1/2. So there's a lot of different numbers that can be written as a fraction that are considered rational numbers. And these can be positive and negative numbers. Today you're going to simplify, you're going to convert decimals into fractions. So we're going to be talking a lot about fractions and decimals. So the first thing you have to understand is you cannot have a 0 in a denominator. So you can't have, let's just go basic as 1 over 0. So let's just talk about 1/2. 1/2 means how many 2's go into 1. So again, how many 2's go into 1? And that's how you get the 1/2, 0.5. So in this case, it'd be how many zeros go into 1. It can't happen. You can't have the number 0 going into 1. It's not possible. So that's why it does not exist. That's why you can't have a 0 as a denominator. Next thing you're going to have to remember is negatives and fractions. Negative can be written as any of these following examples. It could be out in front, so that means it's a -7 over 8. It could be written as top, that'd be -7 over 8. They're the same meanings. It can be written as a number in the denominator, 7 over -8. All of these three examples are negative numbers. Now, if you have two negatives, let's say -7 over -8, these two negatives, just following the rules of division, because fraction is division, these two negatives right there, if you have two negatives in there, make it a positive. So that's a positive 7 over 8. This would not be considered a negative number. But since all of these have one negative in them, all of these examples are all negative fractions. So you're going to learn how to simplify fractions. So you look for a common factor. If you want to make life easy for you, you can look for the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor between 12 and 15 is 3. Then you would take and you would divide by top and bottom by that greatest common factor. So you divide 12 by 3 and 15 by 3. And you get 4 over 5. That's simplifying the fraction. Again, you're looking at the greatest common factor. If you don't have the greatest common factor, then you just might have to keep dividing. For example, let's do 15 over 30. Let's say divide by 5 here, because that is a common factor between 15 and 30. So that's 3. Let's erase that, because that is a 5. So that's 3 on top, and 30 divided by 5 is 6, so that's 3 over 6. And then you just see that there's another common factor between 3 and 6 that you can divide. It is 3. So you can divide both of these numbers by 3. So that is 1 over 2. You might have to keep dividing as long as you have common factors in both of the numbers and top and bottom, your numerator and denominator. So I suggest you just pause this video, try these problems, and play to see what you got. And check your answers. So again, you're looking at greatest common factors. So between 16 and 80, you can write a list out of the factors, so 8 and 2, 4 and 4, 16 and 1, and see what are the greatest common factors. So I think 8 goes into both of them, so I'm going to divide by 8. So 16 divided by 8 is 2. 80 divided by 8 is 10. Then you see both of those are even, which means 2 goes into both of them again. They have a common factor again, so I keep dividing. That means I did not use the greatest common factor, but I still saw a factor a 2 that goes into both of them, so I keep dividing. So that's 1/5. So think about what goes into 18 and what goes into 29. So you might be thinking, what are the factors of 29? So if that's the harder number, let's look at 18. So 18 is 1 and 18, 2 and 9. Also, you have 3 and 6. So you can, 1 goes in it, it's not going to be a common factor, so we're going to avoid 1. So 2 doesn't go to 29 because it's not even. 18 we know is 18 and then 36, so it doesn't go into it. 9, the multiples of 9 are 9, 18, 27, so 9 doesn't go into it. 3, multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. Doesn't go into it. Let's say 6. So 6 is 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. 6 doesn't go into it. So this is the lowest that it could be. It is most simplified, because there are no common factors of 18 that go into 29. So let's focus on C. That's 18 in your numerator, 27 in your denominator. So again, going through the list of factors of 18, 1 doesn't work because we're looking for something higher than 1. 2 doesn't work because 27 is not even. So let's go look at 3. So 3 goes into both of them, so I'm going to divide by 3, even though I don't think that is your greatest common factor, but that's the first common factor that I've seen. So 18 divided by 3, that's 6 in your numerator. 27 divided by 3 is 9. And then you got to see, is there any more common factors? So 6 and 9, 3 goes into both of them. So I'm going to divide again by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2, 9 divided by 3 is 3. There's no more common factors, so that is your final answer. If you just started off and you found the greatest common factor to be 9 here, you would have gotten 2 over 3 in one step instead of dividing twice. So our next step is to write each decimal as a fraction in simplest form. So the key thing here is to understand the place value of your decimals. Here's the 10th place value, 100th place value, and then if you keep going, so let's look at D. There's a 10th place value, 100th place value, 1000th place value, and 10,000th place value. So that's important because the place value happens to be the denominator of that decimal. So 5 is your whole number, so I'm going to write a big whole number as 5. Your decimals place value, that's going to be your fraction. So I have 37 hundredths, so it's going to be 37 over 100. And then you're going to see if you can simplify that. 37 happens to be a prime number, so that's most simplified right there. So again, you look at the place value, so you have 0.622 thousandths because that's a 10th, 100th, and thousandths. So you're going to put 622 over the last place value, so that's thousandths. So 622 over 1,000. So now your job is to simplify it. Don't get overwhelmed. The first step, I think, is to see they're both even, so let's divide by 2. So my denominator becomes 500. My top becomes 311. And then your job is to see if anything that divides 500 goes into 311. So let's try 5. Nope. Doesn't go into 5 because it doesn't end in a 0 or a 5. 10 doesn't go into it because it doesn't end in a 0. 2 doesn't go into it because it's not even. 100 doesn't go into it because it's not 300. So that is your most simplified answer. So for C, we have 8.75. So again, the farthest decimal place is the hundredths, so you have 8 as a whole number, and then your fraction is going to be 75 over 100. 75 over 100 should be a fraction that you know, pretty simple it ended up to be 3/4. Or you can take this and divide by the greatest common factor of 25. Last one for D. So this is their 10th place, 100th place, 1000th place, 10,000th place. So it's 2,025 over 10,000. Don't forget that negative sign out in front, so it's a negative fraction. Then you want to simplify. After you go through all your greatest common factors, I would try 5 because 20, 25, and 10,000 all end in a 0 or 5. But then if you go further, 25 goes into both of them. So if I divide by 25, that is 81 over 400. Then you can see if any of the factors of 81, which are 9 and 9, 81 and 1, that go into 400, and there aren't any. So it's 81 over 400 as your final answer. Do not forget the negative. Start off negative. There's only one negative, so it has to be negative 81 over 400. Next, you're going to learn how to convert a fraction into a decimal, and it just happens to be long division. Setting up your numerator and denominator. Denominator goes on the outside. Your numerator goes underneath the bracket on the inside. So it's just long division. Numerator divided by your denominator. So 7 over 20, how we set that up is your numerator goes on the inside, your denominator goes on the outside. So it is going to be 7 on the inside, 20 on the outside. So you set it up as long division. So how many 20s go into 7? 0. So I have 0. So then as soon as you get that 0, so minus 0, because 0 times 20 is 0, so it's 7 left over. You add a decimal. Once you add decimal, that means you can add a 0 down here. That decimal gives you the right of way to add a 0 to help out 20 going into 7, in this case 70. So how many 20s go into 70? So you have 3, so minus 60. So you have 10 left over. So 20 goes into 10 0 times, but since you added the decimal, that helps out. You can add a 0 down here. 20 goes into 100 5 times. So minus 100. That's 0. So your answer is 0.35. Now let's try B. 11 divided by 9. 11 is your numerator, so it goes inside the bracket box. And then 9 is your denominator, so it goes outside. So how many times is 9 going to 11? Once. So minus 9, you have 2 left over. How many times does 9 go into 2? It doesn't go into 2. So let's add that decimal for help and bring a 0 down. So how many times does 9 go into 20? Two times. So minus 18. So you have 2 left over. We added that decimal to help out 9, so we're going to add another 0 because 9 doesn't go into 2, but it does go into 20. 2 times, that's 18. You can see if I continue this pattern, I'm going to get some repetition of 2's. Add a 0 for help. Minus 18 again because it goes in 2 times. So there's a repetition. So that means it's repeating 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So I can write it as 1.2 with that repeating line over it to repeat.